Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some stories about Kevin. Before we start, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and you can always change your mind later. But if you stick around, you might just feel better about yourself after listening to these stories about Kevin. Alright, our first story today comes to us from LawnGnomeFlamingo. Great name. A former coworker was special. Let's jump right in. My job is to make deliveries to hospitals. Our company provides vehicles to allow for these deliveries and provides gas cards. I work the graveyard shift and Kevina clocked in at 7:30 a.m. We often use the same company car. Our products need to be dropped in a secure and locked room for security reasons. To enable this, we use a combination of our IDs as authorized contractors, key cards, door codes, and keys, as well as the occasional security guard escort. Our deliveries are fairly predictable and consistent. In addition to our contractor ID, we have a fob to scan in the cars we drive, so our company can track certain safety and efficiency metrics. If we don't scan our fob, we have to make our deliveries with the GPS beeping the whole ride. No matter how many times Kevina was trained on her routes, I'm convinced she asked for directions in every hospital she delivered to every day. Weeks into delivering a certain site, she was training a newer employee. In spite of having made at least a dozen deliveries here before, she still had to make a phone call to get the code to open the door. To add to my theory that she wandered the halls for help instead of remembering where to go, here's an example. One morning, she was making a delivery NBD. Instead of going directly to and from the appropriate room, she got so lost, she stumbled upon a woman in the middle of changing clothes. The startled woman was a nurse and was changing in a room with the door closed. Kevina actually didn't know where she was going, in spite of having delivered to this particular location several times before. Again, for security reasons, we had to deliver to a secure and locked room. Due to her inattentiveness, she didn't have the appropriate key card to a particular room. In theory, she should have made sure she had the key card before she even left to make the delivery. Once she got to the hospital and realized she couldn't access the appropriate room on her own, instead of seeking out security or calling work for help or advice, she left the delivery behind a trash can. A few things about sharing a company car with her. Where we're located, it's snowy and icy for months. She refused to fill up the gas tank because it's cold. Girl, you're driving when the sun's up. It's colder at 4 a.m. during my regular route. One day, she took the gas card home with her, and I didn't have enough gas to finish my route. I still don't know why she took the gas card home with her when she didn't even use it. I ended up having to spend my own money to get back to work. I was reimbursed later. I was furious. One day, she left a note with the car keys. Don't use, oil problems. Since we didn't have extra cars, I had no choice but to use the car anyway. Stuff is time sensitive and had to be delivered. I loaded up and started the car. The problem? A pop-up alert saying oil change required. Apparently, Kevina lost her car key fob a few weeks before her last day. Instead of telling our manager so she could get it replaced, Kevina decided the car beeping during her entire route, sometimes a trip could last 3 hours, was preferable to being scolded and having to cope with a day or two of embarrassment. Her memory was horrible. I was taking a week's vacation. The Friday before my week off, I trained her on my route since she would be covering for me. One stop in particular, she spent a good 10 to 15 minutes asking questions about that particular location. All the while, I was explaining how I chose my parking spot. Some spots are reserved for on-call physicians, when and where to use the key card, how to contact security so she could enter the building, etc. The following Monday, only 48 hours later, she didn't remember a darn thing about this particular stop. She was on the phone with our manager for a good 20 minutes trying to figure out what to do. I know I'm petty, but my final comment about Kevina is super petty. She asked me twice if I missed Omaha. I reminded her both times I've never been to Nebraska without adding that I'm from Oklahoma. OP added a couple of edits on at the bottom. It says, she was constantly late and was told to call so we'd know she was still coming in. Instead of calling work directly or even the supervisor, she'd call one of the other drivers. During her interview and hiring process, she was told repeatedly that she would have to work the graveyard shift for 2 non-consecutive weeks every year to cover time off from me and the other person who clocked in at midnight. Our supervisor wanted to be absolutely sure Kevina was aware of this and was okay with it. Kevina got in her head that it was 2 nights a year and was unhappy when she had to fulfill this requirement. It was a contributing factor in her decision to quit. Since she started after COVID, we had to take our temperature every shift. Our thermometer had a battery that would run out quickly because of how frequently it was used. She often wrote down her temperature as low, not realizing that the battery needed changing. Jumping down to the comment section in this one, there's one from a user called Tacticus Throwaway. It says, with that kind of mental capacity, I assume her next job was in city government. OP responded to this one and said her preferred career was in sales. She left this job after less than a year for a more people-centric job. In spite of her intelligence, she was quite gregarious. Good for her, since she referred to pharmacists as laboratorians. Now, OP mentioned in another comment that during training, Kevina never wrote anything down, and that obviously contributed to the problems that she was having going forward in the job. If you know that you have a horrible memory, writing things down is a wonderful thing. I, for one, use my notes app in my phone all the time because my memory is absolutely horrible. I usually can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, but I'm aware of this limitation that I have, and so I take steps to mitigate the problem. Kevina in this story might not have had the mental faculties to even remember to write things down. Our next story today comes to us from JinxAdnix. My personal Kevin. Let's jump right in. So I have this friend, he is Kevin. Not a Kevin, he is Kevin. He has a kind heart, but his intellect is comparable to that of a brick wall. Let me try to recount some of the worst, or best, things I can think of about him. Sorry some of these are rather political, but my Kevin is obsessed with popularity, and politics are quite visible, whether you're on the right or left. I assure you, he has taken your side and shamed you. He is basically a bad take generator. He insisted I couldn't be a communist. I thought maybe it was him being in shock, but no, he thought only a government could choose such things and that all citizens were classed the same as their government. After watching Critical Role, he drew up a character sheet for some OP god thing, setting them as level 20 and deciding they always rolled a natural 20 and could force other players and DMs to go along with anything they said, and then did nothing with it. Like something would happen. I don't know which is worse. He assumed I was an AI. I have no idea why. I only learned this about a month ago, that a grown man I have known for years who works as a programmer assumed I was an AI. He argued with me that COVID-19 was worse than the Black Plague on the grounds it forced him to wear a mask. Not that it made people in general do this, that it made him in particular put a mask over his face. He wanted to go to China as an English teacher because he assumed pandas were common, urban dwelling, and that he could just take one. I explained to him that he was wrong, but later learned he tried to go anyway, but gave up because he was asked for a travel visa. Whether or not he gets scared of sharing personal information depends on the day you catch him. But in this case, it was not a matter of sharing his info. It's because he didn't know a travel visa from a Visa card and already had a Visa card, so he just got confused. Assumed the Chinese government was run by idiots who didn't know how to work a debit card and gave up. That's all I can recall for now. I'll come back next time he has a bad take for y'all. In the comment section for this one, there was one from a user called Miscellaniac. A brick wall has some coherence. Your Kevin sounds about as smart as a pile of bricks. OP responded to this one and said, a pile of bricks with bad takes written on them that just wants a hug. Okay, if you're wondering, yes, OP mentioned something about a couple of political things, and yes, they were in this story, and yes, I cut them out of this story because I don't want to anger the YouTubes. If you really want to know what they said though, you can click the link down below to story 2. It'll take you directly to their story where everything is there, including those 2 paragraphs. Back to the Kevin though, it's a wonder people like this on a regular basis remember how to breathe. I do want to add on though that OP said that they were a kind-hearted person, they were just dumb. Our next story today comes to us from adiabatica. a Kevin in the school band. Let's jump right in. The following stories I'm about to tell all happened around a decade ago in a span of 2 years. As children in elementary or primary from where I lived school, we all had recounts of making mistakes that ended with a scolding from teachers. But there was one Kevin in particular who was something else. He must have been at least 10 years old during that time, considering I was only a grade above him. In our concert band, he was a keyboard player who had gotten on the conductor's nerves more than a dozen times during rehearsals. Below are 3 of his most memorable antics. Kevin would hit a note on the keyboard when the conductor was talking to the whole band, in an otherwise silent hall. This happened not once but several times. My only guess is that he wanted to play a game of making a sound without her noticing while the instrument is on full volume. It's no surprise he never won. We had trolleys that were designed to hold music stands. One time, as we were all packing up, and for some reason, Kevin decided to take a little joyride by revving up one of the trolleys before standing on it with both feet. I wouldn't be mentioning this here if it weren't for the fact that he tried zipping past 1 meter in front of the conductor. Again, I could only presume he was daring himself to not get caught by her. Like the first point I made, he wasn't successful. The last one has to be the most shocking example. One time, we had to perform at a venue which meant some heavier pieces of gear had to be carried to and from the bus. After returning to the school on a rather late afternoon, they had to be returned to the storage room. A few boys were given the responsibility to wheel in the timpanis. I happened to be carrying a few cymbals when I noticed a gnarling sound behind me. Here was Kevin dragging a bass drum on the playground's asphalt. A split second later, I heard the angriest screech that almost made my nerves short circuit. My band's conductor, mortified and furious, yelled at him to stop on the spot before chewing him out so thoroughly that he might as well have been a figurative beef jerky that day. Only when we turned over the drum to see the splinters on the rim, Kevin learned about friction the hard way. These were all the things that I happened to witness, not much, but I felt they'd be worth sharing. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Every Fairy Dies. It says, "That last story, that's no way to treat an expensive musical instrument. Did he really learn about friction? Or were there other incidents without musical instruments that had the same results?" As for the first two, some people just don't think beyond, hey, I want to do this right now. I'm not sure if the Kevin in this story was impulsive or if they just didn't think about consequences. I can kind of sympathize with the Kevin in this story because I know when I was younger, I really didn't think about the consequences of a lot of the things that I did, and they got me into some deep trouble. As far as dragging the bass drum across the ground though, that wasn't very bright. I'm a little torn on this one though. I'm not sure if this was a Kevin or just a 10-year-old boy being a 10-year-old boy. Our next story today comes to us from Jane Says, "Kevin doesn't pay taxes." Let's jump right in. I'm not going to do a lot of backstory on this one. I've known this person a very long time and I have endless stories. This is just the latest. I'm going with Kevin and using the they pronoun just to make my life easy. Kevin informed me today that they don't need to pay taxes. I probed further, needing to know the reasons they're about to put themselves in a lot of risk. They make 6 figures. They're not getting out of paying taxes. There will be serious consequences. Yes, folks, even Kevins can make an incredible salary. This is why I can't sleep at night. What I found out from Kevin shook me. I can barely process the stupid. It was first declared as fact that it's not illegal to pay taxes. This reminds me of the IT subreddit where the users think their monitors are the computers. It's that moronic of a conversation. I now put forth the reasonings of a Kevin, one who is diving deeper and deeper into conspiracy theories to my horror. Here are Kevin's thoughts on taxes. Kevin informs me that there's a bunch of butthole solicitors sending me mail like every day, trying to get me to pay taxes and crap. They're mad I didn't pay taxes, I guess. They can get over it, to be honest. So I of course tell them they have to pay taxes. It's not optional in the US. Kevin wants to know why they should pay the government, and I explain. Kevin then tells me this whole thing sounds unconstitutional. Kevin thinks that if the IRS garnishes their wages, Kevin can sue them because that's illegal. After a long sigh and a few forehead smacks, I tell them to just hire someone to do it for them. They can afford it and it's one less thing to stress over. Plus, I have little faith Kevin can correctly do their taxes at all. Kevin explains further that you don't have to pay taxes, you just have to deal with them getting huffy and stealing your money. It sounds like if I hire anyone, it'll be to get them to cease and desist this crap. F Britain, the Queen is dead, tell her to stop stealing my crap. I kid you not. I don't know how the Queen got dragged into this, but I guess it's a trending topic anyway at the moment. When I tell Kevin there's no way around this, their genius solution is to quit their very well-paying job and be homeless. Very practical indeed. Kevin then explains they're worried that people mailing them are not the IRS. So I tell them what an IRS mailing looks like. After that, I get this gem. I don't think the IRS would mail anyone. They're bankrupt now. The what now? They're also still unconvinced that it is illegal to not pay your taxes. Kevin logic is magical. I try my best to pull data proving that taxes are mandatory, and being ignorant of this will not make it go away. Kevin is unmoved even after I explain that the IRS can and will get their money. People, Kevin somehow has a six-figure job. No way the IRS will overlook this. I cite the laws, I cite the cases where it's gone to court and been unsuccessful over and over again. It's a moot point. Obviously, a fool's errand. If a grown adult doesn't even know that not paying taxes is illegal, how are they going to understand tax codes and constitutional law? But you know Kevin knows the law and they're in the right. According to Kevin, there are no such laws, and anything that's been provided that says otherwise is a misinterpretation. I'd like to tell you, dear reader, that I got through to them, but we all know there is no getting through to a very determined Kevin. Kevin has decided to ask a lawyer to help, and if they have to pay, then I'm signing it VC. Kevin seems to think that this is somehow sticking it to the man. Even after pointing out all the penalties that they are receiving each month, they don't pay taxes. On top of lawyer fees if they go that route, this is only hurting them. That went over like a lead balloon. I have failed. Jumping down to the comment section in this one, there's one from a user called Length of a While. It says, as sad as it is, this isn't an unpopular conspiracy theory. They think that because taxes aren't in the original draft of the Constitution, you don't have to pay them. Like constitutional amendments aren't a thing. OP responded to this and said, yes, this is sad. Another user named Chojin commented as well and said, kind of funny, because everyone's favorite amendment wasn't in the original draft either. Somehow there's no issue with that one though. Okay, wait a second, Kevin has a job, Kevin's making six figures. Unless Kevin's working for himself, then there's taxes being taken out of his paychecks as it is. So Kevin actually is paying taxes, but he might not be getting his refunds because he hasn't been doing his taxes. I would assume that Kevin, being the dumb butt that he is, that this is actually the case, and there might actually be some money owed back to Kevin, and I'm sure if Kevin knew that, well, they'd be doing their taxes immediately. Check out all 4 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.